As Florida celebrates its 500th birthday, we'll learn about the people, places, and cultural achievements that most contribute to our state's legacy, and take a look at some of the places that make Central Florida unique. Ben Brotemarkle from the Florida Historical Society joins me next on Metro Center Outlook. Hello everyone, and welcome to Metro Center Outlook. I'm Diane Trees, Director of the UCF Metro Center and your host for Metro Center Outlook. Florida was the 27th state to join the Union, but its history actually dates back some 14,000 years when it was inhabited by Native Americans. 2013 marks the celebration of Viva Florida, the 500th anniversary of Ponce de Leon's arrival on Florida's East Coast. Joining me today to discuss Florida's rich, diverse history and culture is Ben Brotemarkle, Executive Director of the Florida Historical Society. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Talk us through the early discovery and development of Florida.
Sure. Well, when we talk about the discovery of Florida, I think it's important, as you mentioned, to recognize that there were people living here for over 10,000 years. And Florida had prehistoric people who had complex societies that we need to acknowledge. There were dozens of tribes by the time that Ponce de Leon arrived in 1513. But Ponce de Leon is credited with naming our state, and as you mentioned, 2013 marks the 500th anniversary of that event. He had actually come over in 1493 on the second voyage of Christopher Columbus and had become the governor of Puerto Rico, but Christopher Columbus's son decided that he wanted to be governor of Puerto Rico and went to court and won. But Ferdinand II, the King of Spain, was a fan of Ponce de Leon and told him, well, we'll come up with a contract. You can go in search of this island of Benami that we're pretty sure is out there. And if you find that, then you can be governor of that, and we'll have a contract that will tell who gets what gold and what slaves. So Ponce set out with 3 ships, and on April 2nd, 1513, he dropped his anchor somewhere along the east central coast of Florida and named it La Florida because it was the Easter season, which was the Festival of Flowers. And so they named it La Florida. April 3rd, the next day, they went ashore and claimed the land for Spain.
Let's talk a little bit about the early industries in the state. I believe logging, farming, some citrus growing. We're more dependent now on our tourism and that, but are any of the original industries still alive in the state?
Sure. The cattle industry was the biggest industry for a long time in Florida, far above citrus and tourism, which came later. And that's still there. In fact, it was the Spanish, again, who brought domesticated cattle to Florida. In 1539, Hernando de Soto brought the first domesticated cattle here, and they kind of strayed off, and the native populations actually raised them and bred them too. And then when European settlers came back in, they took over the industry in the early 1800s. And that industry still exists today. You know, in Kissimmee, for example, you know, you think of 192 as this kind of tourist area, this ancillary to Disney, and there's T-shirt shops and these kind of pseudo dinner theaters and things down there. But just literally a couple of blocks off of that is this cowboy cracker culture that is still alive and well. And you can see it happening. In fact, the kids in Osceola County don't have to go to school when they're having the Silver Spurs Rodeo.
The rodeos and the ranching.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
And there's the Bluegrass Festival, which preserves that music. There's great historic buildings that you can go and visit there. The Osceola County Historical Society maintains those. So that is alive and well. Citrus industry too, and of course tourism in its many forms.
Before we continue, let's take a look at one family-owned and operated business that has been helping residents of Lake County for more than 100 years. WUCF's Jerry Klein takes us to Claremont to meet the family behind Hall Well and Pump Service.
First, you might ask yourself, why do you need a water drilling company in a place called Lake County?
Water prices are getting higher and higher, and people wanting to save money and want to drill irrigation wells to save them the bottom line on from a water bill.
Eddie Hall should know He's the fourth generation of his family to head up Hull Well and Pump Service in Claremont, even while his father stays active.
Gets in your blood, and it's something you want to do. I can't wait to get up in the morning and go to work.
It's a work ethic that goes way back in this family and a business that dates to 1912.
A fellow had an old rig up here in Claremont, old steam engine. He wanted to sell it. My grandfather decided he might want to buy it, so he bought it.
It was a steam-powered engine, and it actually drove itself and went about 2 miles an hour.
Never dug a well in his life, but he bought the old rig and he started just learned himself, taught himself. He drilled about 10, 12 a year. My dad, in the 40s and 50s, he dug about 20, 25 a year. Where now we drill 75, 100.
To keep up that pace, Hull wastes no time on site and does not rely on yesterday's technology.
Days to drill 150 feet with this rig. With our new rig, it would take 3 to 4 hours.
The new rig is a state-of-the-art drill. They start by driving 21-foot sections of well casing pipe welded into one long strand straight down through the limestone rock below, in this case, over 120 feet of sand. Then the rotary head takes over, boring through the stratified layers of rock under Central Florida until they start bringing up fossilized shells that mark the so-called Avon Park layer, here almost 240 feet down, where they stop to protect even deeper aquifers. They swap the drill rig for a smaller derrick to lower a submersible pump and sections of pipe down the well to below the water level, and in a matter of hours, this homeowner has a new source of irrigation water, and the Hulls have a new source of pride.
The whole family enjoys our work. It's something we all look forward to doing.
That feeling you get that you know you're doing something good.
And we love it.
Ben, in addition to Lake County, there are 8 other counties that make up the Central Florida region. What role did those 9 counties play in Florida's history?
Gosh, the history here is very long. In fact, we were talking about the prehistoric people. We can start there. Over on the coast in Brevard County, back in 1982, there was a backhoe operator named Steve Vanderjack who was clearing away muck for what is now the Windover Farm subdivision there near 50 and 95. And he noticed this round, brownish object in his backhoe, and he noticed that this was a skull and that he had uncovered several sets of human remains. Well, to make a long story short, they called in the police. It was not a mass murder site or something. They called in an anthropologist named Glenn Doran, who determined that this was certainly Native American, maybe 400 years old or so. But they did carbon dating tests and found out that these remains were between 7,000 and 8,000 years old, which is 3,200 years older than King Tut, 2,000 years older than the Great Pyramids, just for some perspective. So they did an excavation over a couple of years, found hundreds of ritualistically buried bodies, all buried the same way, wrapped in the oldest woven cloth found in North America. Just a fascinating sight. I could go on and on about this, but that shows just how early the history was. And this is in the shadow of the space program, which is another important part of our local history. We also have Eatonville, of course, which is the oldest incorporated African-American municipality in the United States. In 2012, celebrated their 125th anniversary as the oldest black town in the United States, entirely governed by African-Americans. Of course, Zora Neale Hurston, the writer, folklorist, and anthropologist, arguably the most significant cultural figure to come out of Central Florida, certainly, came out of Eatonville. Gosh, there's just so much history here. Cassadaga, an interesting town near DeLand, up in Volusia County. It is the oldest religious community of its type, founded in 1894.
In the United States?
In the southeast United States. The spiritualists were actually up in New York, but George P. Colby was a spiritualist who came down in 1894 and founded the Southern Cassadaga Spiritualist Camp Meeting Association, which is a group that still owns actually the entire all of the property in the town of Cassadaga. Individuals own different houses and buildings, but the association owns all of that property. And it's a serious religion. They take it very seriously. It's basically like a lot of Christian religions, but they believe in direct contact with people who passed away and believe that anybody can learn how to do this. So it's an interesting, fascinating town. And just so many historic sites in Central Florida, but those are just a few.
Now, the Florida Historical Society is based in Brevard County, which is also home for Port Canaveral. How has water, the access to waterways and water, shaped what the state is today?
Oh gosh, well, from the beginning, again, with the prehistoric people, a lot of the people settled along the coastal regions of Florida. That was the St. Johns River, of course, has been key in the Civil War and other conflicts. Water pretty much defines our state. We're surrounded by water. There are hundreds of miles of beaches, and so it's definitely played a significant role in our development.
One of Central Florida's most historic communities is the city of Sanford in Seminole County. Let's see how Sanford is keeping its history alive by taking a look at its restored river cruise.
My parents actually started the first boat that was here back around 1980 or 81, and they sold the business about 12 years ago. Last year, approximately a year ago, that business went out, and my brother, sister, and I started the St. John's River Ship Company, and here we are.
Hi ladies, welcome aboard. A couple more speed bumps there, be careful.
The city of Sanford's done a lot of work lately restoring the downtown area and bringing people back into this area, and that had a lot to do with us wanting to come back to this location.
The St. John's and Lake Monroe was pretty much the terminus for shipping in Florida at the turn of the century, and as you might know, Sanford is a very historic community, and our entire community developed because of the water. Everyone was real sad when the ship left the community, and of course very, very excited to know that the boat was coming back to the community.
This ship originally was built back in 1986. We've gone through and done a major refurbishment on it, and we decided to name it after our mother, Barbara Lee, who passed away of cancer about a year ago, and she was pretty instrumental in this whole operation. So this was our tribute back to her by naming it the Barbara Lee. A lot of people don't get an opportunity to go out and experience what the St. Johns River has to offer here and the nature. And there's a lot of folks that really have very limited access to the waterways out here, and so it's great to be able to let them get out in the sunshine and the fresh air and take advantage of it.
It has a really great vantage point of the St. John's, going up and down the St. John's and seeing the wildlife, and it brings that authentic paddle wheel boat. It kind of harkens back to a bygone time, and people really want to see that, so I think it's very important because it just adds to the overall historical charm and character of the city.
Ben, we've talked about water, but what about Florida's landscape and the environment? How does that shape the industries we have in the state and influence our way of life?
Well, the landscape and the climate, the beauty, the natural beauty of Florida is really what has led people here and created the modern Florida. We talked about Ponce de Leon and naming it the land of flowers, but the natural beauty is really what has attracted people here. It's been since the mid-20th century that our population has really exploded. Tourism really started back in the 1800s. People like Harriet Beecher Stowe writing about the natural beauty of Florida, trying to encourage people to move here. And many other folks as well, of course, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas writing about the Everglades and the need to protect the Everglades in the mid-20th century. But it was after World War II that people really started moving here. Florida was the training ground for both World War I and World War II for all of the armed services. And people would come here and train and fall in love with the natural environment. Of course, it was the perfect training ground with all the flat land for pilots and then all of the water. And so it was a great way to train soldiers. But after World War II ended, a lot of these people brought their families back to Florida, and the population just exploded. And has continued to grow ever since. Camp Landing, up near what is now Stark, Florida, was the 4th largest city in Florida. It was one of the training grounds for these soldiers. But DDT during World War II was developed as an insecticide, which helped curb the mosquitoes. Mosquitoes, of course, were a huge problem. In fact, the entire Central Florida area was called Mosquito County. So controlling mosquitoes, air conditioning, refrigeration were all important developments that allowed people to come here and really enjoy that landscape.
Now, you mentioned Eatonville before, but we have places like Sanford and St. Augustine, those just exude the culture and the history. What are some of the other spots around the state that have that same sense of preservation and heritage?
Well, as you mentioned, St. Augustine and Sanford, Eatonville, I think too. You can although there aren't many historic buildings left, you still get that sense of community. There are many little pockets throughout the state. Micanopy is one. A lot of the historic downtown areas remain intact from the late 1800s, early part of the 20th century. In fact, we're really lucky. The Florida Historical Society, our statewide headquarters, are located in historic Cocoa Village. And all of the building we're in is a 1939 WPA era post office. And it's where we house our archive of thousands of rare and out-of-print books and maps dating back to the 1500s, photographs, postcards, all sorts of things. But all around us are these historic buildings from the early part of the 20th century. And there are many, many examples of that all throughout the state.
You wrote a book, Beyond the Theme Parks, and you encourage visitors to go past the typical tourist destinations to explore in Central Florida. When did we become such a hub for travelers?
Oh gosh, well that goes back to, again, the latter part of the 1800s, mid to late 1800s is when the tourism industry really started. People thought of Florida as a place to come to actually as almost like a spa, a place to recuperate and regenerate and also
Fountain of Youth, isn't it?
Yeah, well, sure, and also a place to kind of have wild nature, you know, take river cruises and see alligators and that sort of thing. And of course, people like Henry Flagler came down and started building hotels in the late 1800s and created his railway that went all the way down the East Coast. Henry Plant doing the same thing over on the west side of Florida. So these luxury hotels were built in the latter part of the 1800s, early 1900s. And so tourism really begins then. Then the tin can tourists with the invention of the automobile. It opened up a whole new set of, it wasn't just rich people coming to Florida, it was the average person who could get in an automobile, drive down to Florida, and they called them the tin can tourists.
I never heard that phrase before, tin can tourists. Yeah. I like that. 60 miles east of Central Florida's theme parks lies a destination that has been attracting visitors from far and wide for more than 3 decades. Join me as I sample the shrimp and soak up the atmosphere of Dixie Crossroads in Brevard County.
We're preserving a part of Florida history here that the general public doesn't get. You know, people can go down to the Wild Ocean Market at Port Canaveral, they can watch the shrimp boats unload and then know that what they're watching coming out of the ocean and it will eventually end up on their table here at the restaurant.
I enjoy it because everything is local. There's so much history behind the restaurant. Everything is about what goes on in Titusville.
I love walking up to tables and talking to people and going and getting samples of shrimp out of the kitchen so they can try different things and just talking to them.
They're truly loving and caring. Plus, the food is consistently delicious.
Dixie Crossroads is a landmark. I mean, they put Titusville on the map. My career was out at the Space Center, and we had frequent visitors. And Dixie Crossroads was always on their agenda. They had to come to Dixie Crossroads when they came to Titusville.
It brings a lot to a small town. You get a lot of traffic off the interstate. They see our billboards, they don't even know, what's here, and they see it and they come in and they're just so excited about what all is in here.
We do the whole thing from the bottom of the ocean to the table, and so it is fun. It's fun to be able to try and teach the public about how important it is to pay attention to what you're eating, and it's just fun to show them.
Ben, what do tourists gain from exploring Central Florida outside of the theme parks?
Well, a central part of my work has always been to promote a sense of community because for years I heard that Florida had shallow historical roots and that we're a transient population and that there's no sense of community here. And history, learning about local history is really a way to promote that sense of community, I believe. You find out about Eatonville and these wonderful places we've been talking about, St. Augustine the rich history here. It makes you feel more connected. You know, I saw how people were moving here. They'd raise their families here. They'd have careers here, put their kids through school, live here for decades, and still Cincinnati was home or someplace else was home. But learning about that history, beyond just having a great time and seeing interesting things, I believe can really promote that sense of community and make people feel connected to where they're living.
Any spots in particular, favorites of yours?
Oh, there are many, and we've been talking about a lot of them, but I think no trip to Florida is complete without a trip to St. Augustine. There's a lot of rich, wonderful history there. If you make it all the way down to Key West, there's a lot of fascinating history and culture there as well. The Audubon House and the Southern White House and all sorts of great culture down there as well. Up in Pensacola, there's all sorts of fascinating history and culture, and they preserved a wonderful downtown area there. Barberville is someplace people should visit.
Where is that?
That's in West Volusia County. It's a little rural, still a very rural, isolated community, but they've created the Pioneer Settlement for the Creative Arts. And there's a 1919 schoolhouse that is in the center piece of the facility, but they brought all of these other buildings that were in danger of being torn down in other communities nearby to create a historic village. So there's a blacksmith shop and a turpentine still and a church and a post office and several cracker houses. And the first weekend in November, they have their Pioneer Fall Jamboree where people do crafts, and it's really just a fascinating place.
Now, you are well versed in the history of Florida. Is there any element from your perspective that you think that Floridians have overlooked or forgotten about their history?
Well, there's a lot of history that people don't know, and that's kind of our mission at the Florida Historical Society, is to get out there and let people know about the history of Florida. And I think people are discovering so many things. A lot of people don't know about the prehistoric history we've been talking about, or the Spanish settlement, or the cracker cowboy culture that's still alive and well, the pioneer culture. There's a lot of fascinating civil rights culture. Harry T. and Harriet V. Moore, more and more people are learning about them, but they were the first martyrs of the contemporary civil rights movement. Their home in Mims up in North Brevard County was bombed on Christmas night 1951, but they did some amazing work in civil rights before that movement is generally recognized. So there's all sorts of fascinating history, and we at the Florida Historical Society, that's our mission, is to let people know about it.
Ben, thank you so much. I've learned a great deal talking with you. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I've been talking about the history of Florida with Ben Brotmarkle, Executive Director for the Florida Historical Society. Thank you for tuning in to Metro Center Outlook. Until next time, I'm Diane Trees.